Welcome back to the second hour of Dateline New Haven, WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. The man we have this hour made a lot of the last 3 years' headlines tick statewide. And now a bunch of new headlines are going to be coming up locally and rebuilding the New Haven economy that he's going to be behind the scenes on. Josh Geballe, welcome to WNHH's Dateline New Haven. What a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here.
And I'm going to ask you to get so close to the mic, you almost touch it. We're going to talk about three things with Josh. Josh has a new job at Yale. He's spearheading a new organization called Yale Ventures within the university that's going to support and expand innovation and entrepreneurship across Yale and into New Haven. So he's kind of be the guy doing the next phase of jumpstarting that whole biomedical miracle and biotech miracle and entrepreneur miracle in the city. He has just left the job for the last 3 years, basically being the number 2 guy in state government. He was the former Chief Operating Officer for the state of Connecticut, Ned Lamont's right-hand man from COVID to DMV. And he stepped down after those three really busy years. Did it feel like 10 years or what?
Yeah, the last 3 years were the most exciting 20 years of my life.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you think about it, in our lifetimes, is it fair to say that those 3 years will be the most intense period of so many people's lives outside of individual personal experience as a society? I mean, going through this pandemic, it upended everything. Everything we do, from voting to eating to working to seeing our families, right?
No, it's really true. I mean, the last 2 in particular around COVID. Let's hope we don't go through something like that again. But yeah, especially in those early months, right, when we were wrestling with, the first big wave, and we were closing down things, and then, shortly thereafter, we're turning our attention to reopening. But through that process, we had to kind of re-engineer much of society, of schools, of the
And
economy.
every day you had to take into account new information because nobody knew what was really going on, what course the virus would take, what was causing it, for the first few months, mask stop them, don't stop them, get the vaccines out. Did you have any routines or tricks to help you stay focused, not freak out, and be able every day to be the person the governor's calling last thing at night to make sure what's going on and being on top of everything happening all day about this?
That's a good question. It really starts from the top. The tone that the governor set during that period of time, he's a very calm, collected leader. And so, if you had someone in his seat who was freaking out all the time, it would have been a lot more of a challenge. But he was very thoughtful, under control, constantly reaching out to experts in public health and other areas to try to get the best advice. Because like you said, things were constantly changing. So
and there was a lot at stake with every decision you made. If you brought the National Guard out to Southern Connecticut to try to get emergency help to people or beds for people who are sick, every decision you were making might have looked, because if I'm correct, your background was in tech and you care a lot about data and systems. You were an operations guy. And yet here's a case where numbers and operations every day meant someone could live or die, right? That's a lot.
Truly. And it was a weight that we all carried, on our shoulders.
So on the one hand, keeping that in mind is important because you have to realize that you have to be careful. But also keeping it in mind, did it ever make it harder to make a good decision because of what was at stake?
Sure. I mean, we agonized over a lot of the decisions because, like you said, so many of them we knew would have life and death implications. But again, it's, as a function of the governor's leadership style, surrounding himself with a lot of people with different opinions, trying to get to the best decision quickly, being comfortable making decisions with imperfect information. We saw in some other places, people kind of get paralyzed because the path forward wasn't clear, but, he was willing to be decisive and take action, move us forward. And
can you think of a particular day that sticks out in your mind? Doesn't it be the day or the moment? A moment during the pandemic when you said, oh, wow, this is interesting. This is what it means to have an important government position. And here's how we found a way through, or found a way that we can make a difference by keeping calm or doing something smart or making a quick decision, right?
Gosh, there's so many. One that I think is very consequential that I was very proud of being a part of was governor's decision to basically, when we started rolling out the vaccines, you remember there was tremendous scarcity, very little supply. Everyone was eager to get vaccinated. And the governor made the decision early on to basically buck the CDC recommendations and roll out the vaccines on an age-based path. We had done all the analysis. We'd gone through it all. We were convinced.
In other words, say everyone over 65 gets it first rather than just people with immunocompromised?
Well, it was the CDC recommended this very complicated matrix of essential workers and health conditions and everything. And we saw the data was very clear that by far the most clear risk factor was age. And the complexity of administering the CDC path was going to mean it was going to take a lot longer to get shots in arms.
I remember that decision.
And the governor was, we met with the hospitals, the CHCs, everybody who was going to be on the front lines of actually administering this. And they were all begging us, like, we need a simpler path forward. But to buck the CDC in the middle of that moment in time took an enormous amount of courage.
Was there blowback for that?
Tremendous. We got heavily criticized. But
was that because they were worried that if Connecticut does that, and you were on the Biden team, right? If Connecticut does that, oh wait, no, that was before Biden. But if one state does that, that makes it harder for them to have uniform rules for the other states. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think we didn't get as much blowback at the federal level. It was more locally here, because the CDC recommendations prioritize certain groups of people that now we were saying, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait another month or another 2 months because we're going to do all the senior citizens first. And I get that. Like, they had been led up until that path to think that they were going to be next, and now you move the goalposts out. Very understandably, there were a lot of people very upset about that.
Did you ever get yelled at the store?
All the time.
Which store?
Let's see. When I was out at CVS, I remember, to be fair though, I think far more, probably 10 to 1, people would come up and say, I think you guys did a good job.
And I'm trying to remember now, I think the first year of the pandemic, we were kind of together in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Then finally this crazy divisiveness that I really don't understand, people tearing each other over this. But I guess everyone's kind of gone crazy because the pandemic in some ways, it just takes different forms.
Yeah, it's frayed clearly everywhere, been including in Connecticut, more recently. But generally, I think the vast majority of people who will stop and pick you out, have kind things to say and recognize the impossible choices that were confronting us, kind of every step of the way.
I think the general sense of people was that the leaders in New Haven and Connecticut were taking it seriously. Nobody knew the right answers. You were going to have to change your mind when there's new evidence about masks or how it's transmitted or what new variants are going to be like compared to old ones. But that people were trying to do the right thing and they were being serious about it. And that's all you can do.
I think that's right. And you also kind of take a barometer typically of where the criticism's coming from. And we were getting criticized from people who thought we were doing too much, and we're getting criticized from people who think we were doing too little. And so maybe we're kind of treading the right path in the middle.
And we're talking about the path that Josh Geballe is taking. He was the chief operating officer of the state of Connecticut with a new challenge, a new job. He's now moved on to become a official at Yale University. What's your title again?
I'm the managing director of Yale Ventures.
And Yale Ventures is a new name for an expanded version of the division of Yale that helps professors and researchers who invent stuff start companies, find money for those companies, get patents, grow those companies, hire people, and locate New Haven. Is that a fair way to?
Pretty good summary. Yeah. I mean, we've got thousands of people at Yale, faculty and students, by the way, who are coming up with new ideas, new inventions. And in its simplest form, what we're here to do is help them figure out how to take that and turn it into something that can solve a problem, a new product, a new service that can tackle, some of the big problems.
And Yale's always done that. The acronym is OCR, Office of Cooperative Research. Yale Ventures, as I understand, is the new name for OCR, but it's not just the name. It has more components now. OCR, right, wasn't just working directly with the researchers, professors who have the new invention, but you're doing more now. What is that more that you're doing?
That's right. So OCR historically had been the university's tech transfer office. So going back a little bit, there was a law passed in 1980 at the federal government that empowered universities, essentially encouraged them to help take all of the innovation that's going on and help spin it out in ways that can benefit society, create jobs and economic development. So that was OCR's role. That's patenting that technology and then licensing it out to new startups or to companies who can scale it up. So this Yale Ventures still includes that, and we're looking at ways that we can streamline that process and reach more faculty and more students as the interest in seeing their ideas become new products and services expands. But it's broader than that too. So it's new training programs, helping people understand how to start new businesses.
And the people being Yale people.
Well, yes, but also we do have, and I'll get to this in a minute, but part of our mission under Yale Ventures is to partner much more seamlessly with the broader community as well. So not just Yale people.
Right, so I was reading up. So the one thing you're doing new in addition to patenting, helping them patent and license is to train more people to start up companies, to create the next Alexion. And then to find people to work with in New Haven. And is it fair to say that's at two levels? The corporate level, whether it's investors or other companies that already exist who might become part of a project or help a project or a customer or whatever, as well as the community at large in terms of tapping into these companies, like if there are people in communities with inventions who might want to be get some help starting it, or people might want to work at these places. Does that sound right?
That's exactly right. So,
Okay.
it's about the overall ecosystem, right? And the ecosystem here in Greater New Haven is not just about Yale. It's about everybody who's here, because there are ideas that come out of the community and startups that have nothing to do with Yale, but benefit from a broad, inclusive, dynamic ecosystem, because we all need the same things. We need employees to help grow those businesses. We need the people who have the skills. We need oftentimes investors, people who are willing to invest. We need space, whether it's lab space or office space. And we need an environment where people want to live here, right? Where they want to be part of this community, where it's an exciting, dynamic place to be. They're happy to put down roots, raise their families here. It all works together, and that's kind of how you get strong economic growth.
Have we left out any of the key parts of that mission?
One other part, which has to do with attracting additional corporate partnerships. So there's a lot of companies out there that are interested in things that we're researching in different labs around Yale, and there's opportunities to work with them as well to attract investment and resources to come in to help enable our faculty and students do more, go faster.
So 2 ways then. Yale helps the broader ecosystem, people out there who aren't part of Yale start companies or work at companies, but also Yale finds people where there might be money that's from outside Yale come in and help these companies go.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Josh Geballe. So May 17th and 18th, is it fair to say it's kind of a coming out event for your new venture, Yale Ventures, that you guys will be an innovation summit at the Omni?
Yeah, well, a little bit. This is an event that's going on for years. And so, pre-COVID times, this was 1,000 people plus getting together. It was often at the Yale School of Management.
And it's so weird. I edited a local news organization. I never knew about it. I probably saw it but didn't notice or something.
Paul, and therein lies one of the opportunities for us, I think, which is to do a better job of communicating more broadly about a lot of the exciting things that are going on. Events like this summit, which we'll
So you want more New Haven to know about it this year?
Totally. Yeah, no, we want, and we're very deliberately inviting startups who have nothing to do with Yale, UConn student startups from the community to come pitch. We're going to have dozens and dozens of venture capital investors coming. There's going to be pitch competitions. There's going to be panelists and speakers, but absolutely, we'd love to have the whole community come join us.
And of course, it's fair to say that one of the biggest advantages to attending an event like that for budding entrepreneurs, what the conversations between the events.
Right? Oh, of course. It's the networking. It's the connections you make. Absolutely.
It's really fun. So I wanted to ask you about the history of how this developed at Yale. So I'll give you my version of history as a reporter covered it and tell me if you think that's accurate. So you mentioned in the early 80s, the federal government tried to encourage university ideas to become companies that help local economies. It was exactly at that time, 82, that Yale created Science Park. We had an old gun factory, rifle factory that once employed 18,000 people that now went out of business. It was slowly going out of business. It was down to 500 people. And this whole landscape of factories. The idea, Sam Chauncey and others at Yale said, and the mayor at the time, Biagio Delito, said, let's create a whole new high-tech place there for the jobs of the future and help Yale researchers in a place called Science Park turn those into companies and grow. And it was exciting, but 2 things happened that kind of stunted it. One was the president at the time, Bart Giamatti, was not a fan. The story was that when he was asked to sign the approval of it, he said, now don't bother me about any of this again. And that's a negative way of portraying it. And I wasn't a big fan of Bart, but I think he had a really legitimate argument against all this. He felt that commercializing research compromised the academic mission. Very old-fashioned idea. He felt that if the university was promoting turning research into companies, that was going to steer the research you do into what's going to help some people make money rather than what necessarily is for the long-term good of society. He wasn't much a believer in that market philosophy of research. Now, including us on the left at the time, we were against them on that. We said, you got to help New Haven, you got to create these companies. And, Benno Schmidt barely knew where Science Park was. But then the other presidents, 1992 comes along, 1993, Rick Levin becomes president of Yale with a mission to do more with New Haven. He was an economist, and he was all over this. So OCR might have existed, but I remember at the time people saying OCR now is encouraged. Rather than don't bother me about saying, let's make Science Park work. And that's when Science Park started to work. When you got Carter with Stanley in here, as well as the downtown project there too, Building 25 building up, and an aggressive promotion of local companies to create jobs. And so it seems to me that you're now at 3.0. 2.0 is when it started revving up, and now you're broadening out to the community and think of it as a larger part of an ecosystem. But the other thing that happened was some of those original companies ended up not staying here. I remember one guy invented this Russian professor. It used to have a dolly stick a thermometer in the air. He invented the stick it in your ear thermometer. And he was in Science Park. I remember going to his office. There were 2 people there. As soon as he got the money to go national, he went to San Diego for a whole bunch of reasons because of the labor. And we had that happen with some other companies. I went to Cheshire but came back, and it sounds the big story. And now that might have turned a tide too, because we just finished filled a big new office tower, biotech tower at 100 College Street. We're now building a second one that's now 60% or more filled. Alexion was bought, but they ended up staying here with the research. Do you think that's a fair way to describe the historical precedent that puts Josh Geballe now behind the wheel of 3.0? And if so, what does that mean for how you're going to do your job?
Well, listen, I'll defer to you on the history, Paul.
No, this is your field, not mine.
No, but that's great.
I went to all the original meetings at Science Park, and what the promise was, this is going to benefit our neighborhood. Did we open gates or not? I remember the stick in your thermometer guy. That guy cracked me up. I forget his name. He was a great guy.
Yeah, well, there's a lot in there. I mean, I think there's no question that there has been an age-old debate, and this is not an area I have a lot of expertise, but in academia between what is our mission and what is the right role of commercialization. But my sense is more and more there's a recognition, particularly when you're talking about scientific innovation, innovations that can cure diseases, that can treat cancer.
I actually think the debate is over. I think commercialization won. And even though I respect Giamatti and how he felt about it, and I want the world to work that way, but the debate's over. Like, the one thing a lot of us who opposed Trump give him a lot of credit for was Operation Warp Speed. Because we're always worried when private sector comes in to make public sector decisions of public health, but that really did seem to help get us a good vaccine faster. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And in New Haven, I never hear that question raised anywhere anymore about the limits of decision-making based on commercialization research. It seems like everyone's on board on that one now. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's still some folks out there who have, different views on that. But
well,
for
what
the
I hear
most part,
out there instead is this going to benefit us? Are those jobs for us?
Yeah.
Are those jobs for everybody?
They are. I mean, they should be. The typical biotech startup is going to have some, leadership. People who've probably been experienced on it before. They're going to have some PhDs and white coats doing research, but they also have lab techs and they have office staff. And, there's a whole area of focus right now of job training programs that can help train people from the community to take those jobs. There's enormous demand and unmet need for those types of jobs, just like there are for the PhD scientists as well.
And the hope always was, now when you had 18,000 people working around the clock without rifles, there were bars that were in business, there were dry cleaners, there were grocery stores. The numbers aren't quite the same at scale here because of modern technology, right? We're not looking to build 160,000. I mean, it will be 160,000 one day, but if we go up 3,000 people to 135,000, it seems like a big jump. It seems a little modest, but do you think it can build scale so that spin-off industries are helped as well?
Oh, completely. And it's actually, in my opinion, it's a much more robust form of economic growth too. When you have many smaller firms that are growing, and some of them become big and they grow into Alexions or Arvinis's where they're employing hundreds of people. But even then, it's not one massive employer that employs thousands of people, that if their technology shifts or that moves it overseas, then it's really a devastating effect. We have much more diversification.
So not one Winchester pulling out kills you. The other question, you were bringing up ecosystems, Josh Geballe. Does that mean if people are in modern economy, you're kind of trained for a job, you're not at a company for life, you're not always in the same exact job for life. Like, look at Josh Geballe. You take the skills that you developed and you bring them somewhere else because they fit somewhere else. Those are the people who survive and succeed now. So is there hope that the work you do in developing the ecosystem, including developing the workforce, will help people in the city at all income levels weather changes in the economy and companies and industries moving it out?
100%. So, one of the really magical things about Cambridge, Massachusetts right now is their economy in biotech is so robust that people move there and they know that if this highly risky biotech company fails, the science doesn't work, I can walk down the street and get 10 job offers and, later that week, no problem, like there's no risk. We're getting close to that here in New Haven as well.
Are we? That's part are we kind of seeing the day in 2022 that we were hoping to have in 1985?
Well, I'll give you an example. Tomorrow, the Yale Biotech Club, which is a bunch of students who are obviously interested in biotech, they're holding a career fair. We have 30 companies coming to that career fair who are hiring here in New Haven, some of which hiring dozens of people, thirsty for talent, eager to fill those
30 local
roles.
Companies in biotech are looking to fill jobs in New Haven, and not just highly skilled?
Not just highly skilled.
When and where is that?
It's tomorrow. It's online. You can go Google Yale Biotech Club, and I'm sure you'll find it there. It's I'm actually kicking it off. They asked me to do the keynote in the morning, and then they've got one-on-one kind of speed dating rounds, and it culminates in a party at one of the hotels downtown here.
Oh, so there will be something in person.
Yeah, it will be in person at the end of the day.
So is this are you excited about this?
Super excited.
Tell me why.
I mean, it's because, well, for a number of reasons. One, my personal view is that, when innovation and entrepreneurship is kind of the fastest path to really address the biggest, most challenging problems we face in the world, whether it's, issues of human health, climate change, anything else. It's the core scientific research and innovation that's going to be the solutions to those problems. And Yale and New Haven have tremendous assets to contribute to those solutions. So what we're doing is we're really helping people who are doing that hard work figure out how to bring it to scale. So that's super fun. I also, as you know, have deep roots in this area. So this is home. And, being able to help drive the economic growth here, create jobs, create opportunity, import capital and talent, and help see New Haven in this region, kind of flourish and grow is incredibly exciting. And then it's naturally attracted, smart, interesting, creative people kind of get drawn into this world. And so you end up meeting a lot of fun people. Yeah.
How many weeks you been on the job?
About 2 months now.
2 months. Any successes so far? Initial quick wins?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. There's never a better time to ask for lots of stuff than when you're brand new in a job, right? And so I came into the university and presented a budget request that proposed some pretty ambitious increases to the services we provide, and the ability that we can support this ecosystem. And the universities embraced that. President Salve, the provost Scott Strobel, they really believe in this. They think there's a real moment here for Yale to really increase our participation, our encouragement of entrepreneurship. And so it's a very exciting time. All
right. We're talking to Josh Geballe, the new head of Yale Ventures, which is a very straightforward name for a bigger attempt to try to build the ecosystem of New Haven's economy with the tech economy and startup economy. Let's talk about how you got there. Josh, so you grew up around here in Stony Creek, correct?
Correct.
And then you went into you spent 17 years in the private sector, including 11 years at IBM, and then you became CEO of a small software company, and that grew, and you sold it to Thermo Fisher Scientific. What did you develop at that? What kind of software?
So it was software that helps scientists manage their data. So if you picture a scientific laboratory, people are doing experiments, right? And all those experiments create data that you have to track. And when it's small scale, you track that data on spreadsheets. When it gets to big scale and you're using robotics and automation, now there's a whole category of software that exists to help integrate with those robotics and those instruments and manage this at scale, find the insights out of that data. So that was what our software did. So we were selling to biotech companies, pharmaceutical companies. Those were our clients. We were basically helping them get more productive and move new drug candidates through their pipelines faster.
And so you had early experience in that. What made you the idea to develop that product, and how did you succeed?
So it wasn't my idea. I joined as the CEO with two software engineer co-founders who had worked at a biotech company called Neurogen Corporation.
I remember Neurogen.
Yeah. So they wrote a lot of the software that Neurogen used to manage their scientific data, and they said, "Hey, this is pretty good software. We could probably sell this to other people too." And built a company around it, but they weren't business people, so they were looking for someone with more of a business background.
And was your business background from IBM?
Yeah.
What did it mean to have a business background in terms of how to run an organization, how to deal with markets?
Yeah, how to sell, how to grow a team, how to attract investment capital, how to think about global expansion.
And how'd you link up with these two people at Neurogen?
I had known one of them. I'd actually gone to high school with them, and serendipity plays a big role in life. Just kind of met them at the right time when they were looking for that need, and I was kind of eager in taking on an entrepreneurial role.
You took a risk, and how did you succeed?
It's always about people first and foremost, right? We were able to attract an amazing team. But we were at the right moment in time, too. It was a time when cloud computing was not very well known, not very well trusted.
Most of us didn't really understand cloud for a long time.
Right. And so we were kind of first into that space and leveraging a lot of the innovations that came from cloud computing in that industry.
Did you have a lot of competitors for your product?
Yes. It was a very competitive, multi-billion-dollar industry. But
so how did you get in? Oh, you were first to market.
We were the first to really leverage the cloud. And kind of more modern software development to solve these problems, make the software easier for the lab scientists to use. And so, we capitalized on that.
That's interesting. And do you remember any points at which you were getting feedback about something that wasn't working that you had to hustle to fix so that you didn't lose a competitive position?
Oh, gosh, all the time. Yeah, one of the things about scientists as your customers is they're a very demanding lot. And because they're so smart, they often have ideas for you and suggestions every day.
Part of your most important development team members.
Absolutely. So we'd always get great customer feedback, and then our engineering team would,
Could you remember a call you got one time when you said, holy crap, we got to stop everything and fix this?
Well, the software is mission critical. When the software would go down, if it crashed, then, the lab operations would come to a halt. And, when you're talking about getting a new therapeutic to market every day, is worth millions of dollars. So, there were many of those days when we had to scramble and solve some problem or fix something. But that's the nature of
You sold
startups.
the company when?
In 2017.
All right, so Ned Lamont was going to become governor the next year. What were you doing in that interregnum?
Well, I stayed on with the acquiring company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, for about a year and a half. They created a new division called Digital Science that they asked me to lead, which was our old business plus some software assets that they had. But then I was taking a little sabbatical afterwards, and then the largest investor in our company, Core Informatics, was a venture capital firm called Oak, whose managing partner is one of the most well-known venture capitalists in the world named Annie Lamont.
Oh, okay.
And so when they got elected, she reached out and said, "Hey, what are you up to?"
And then what made you want to do that, Josh? What made you want to go from the private sector to taking a pretty high-pressure job in state government?
Well, a couple things. One, I've always had a belief in public service. I worked for Rosa DeLauro early in my career. I kind of always liked the public service aspect. And the timing was perfect. I had sold my company, and I had the flexibility to be able to do this. And then I saw the team that Governor Lamont was building. He's bringing in not the usual cast of Hartford political characters, but a lot of people from outside government, a lot of private sector people, and had demonstrated, a real interest in shaking things up, doing things differently. Really, in my case, he wanted someone to help him modernize state government, really re-engineer how we do things in the state, make it more efficient, better customer service. And that was exciting to me. And so,
which, of course, is going to lead to the one question I've always been dying to ask you. I'm just going to remind people that Josh Geballe, until recently the COO of the state of Connecticut, number 2 person, is now the number 1 person at Yale's expanded effort to boost the New Haven economy through investment in innovation entrepreneurship. It's called Yale Ventures, and they're coming up with a May 17th and 18th Innovation Summit at the Omni. So a question I wanted to ask you is, how did you fix the DMV? So, like every other human being in this continent, I get hives anytime they'll hear the letters DMV. When I think about the days you lost hours and hours standing there when you seemed like you weren't even moving to get a simple form signed or your kid a driving test, and you couldn't even talk to a human being. Everyone looked miserable, but in this dreary building, no system seemed to make sense. And as a reporter, I saw governor after governor promising to fix it. Governor John Rowland promised he was going to fix it. He had a tech guy named Rock Regan. Nice guy. And then, I don't know if Rel promised to fix it. Dan Malloy, I saw him come to the Yale School of Management, give a demonstration of all the ways he was going to fix it. And it still didn't freaking work. People in New Haven were still driving. And it was about Hamden specifically, which is our regional office. Like, the system all was crappy, but all these people here would drive an hour or more to Old Saybrook because they just couldn't bear the thought of going to the DMV here. Now, am I right? It kind of works. Like, I got my license renewed really easily, and now you're going to be able to do it online? And what happened? What changed? What needed to be fixed? What did you discover?
So a couple things. One, I want to give complete credit to the team, right, that helped lead this. So Commissioner Malgabani, Deputy Commissioner Tony Guerrera, our Chief Information Officer, Mark Raymond, who really helped lead the charge. In the end, it's not rocket science. It was implementing some techniques that have been battle tested everywhere else.
So why couldn't predecessors do that?
I think sometimes it just has to do with focus and leadership and having the right people in the jobs who've done it before and can see it through and know how to lead these projects.
So specifically, what had to have happen?
So there's 2 main things that I think have resulted in the significant improvements. One is moving some transactions online. So
and why was that so hard?
I have no idea.
Or maybe security reasons, because you use them at the airport, your license. You don't want people
I honestly, I don't know why it was so hard. I mean, these are projects that have to be managed, and people who've managed them before, it turns out, it's actually quite helpful doing them again. But it's not rocket science in terms of the technology we use.
Was it old technology? Like, why didn't Malloy have better technology if he wanted to do it so bad?
Listen, I don't know the history, but the bottom line is moving those transactions online moves hundreds of thousands of people from sitting in that line in the office, now online, self-service, middle of the night, whatever.
That line is a Kafka novel.
It was, and it's basically gone, right? It's basically gone because now you get all those people out of the line. Now the line is available for the people who do have the more complex transactions, or some people who don't. There are still people out there who don't want to do it online. They want to go, and so God bless them. There's not many of them left, but we have to, as state government, serve them too. But you get all those people out of the line. And then the other big innovation was a reservation system too, where you can book a reservation, show up, get right in, get right out.
And will you really? It's not 3 hours?
No, absolutely.
So now I'm going to date myself. My kids are now in their 30s or close. When they were teenagers, you'd book a reservation for a driving test, but that was like give up your day. You don't know at what second you're going to be called with no notice while you're waiting there for hours in this dreary place. Is that still the way to get your driver's test?
Well, listen, some there's still more to do, right?
But what is it like now when you go for your reservation?
Yeah, it's much more faster. It's much more predictable. I think that's the point that was always frustrating to most of us was the unpredictability. You didn't know how long you're going to have to wait, and you'd have to block out half a day or whatever. Now at least you know, right? It may take a little while, but I know when I get there, I'm going to get served immediately, and it's going to take some amount of time, and then I can go home. Or more importantly, for many of these transactions, I can do them online in my pajamas on Saturday morning and not have to ever set foot in the DMV.
How's the morale in the department? Those are some of the most burdened people I've ever seen at a job.
Yeah,
I felt bad for them. They were mean to people, but I always felt it was because they worked in really bad conditions.
Yeah, listen, change. It's a mix, right? The change is always challenging for people. It's if you've been doing something one way for a long time,
even if it's a way that's not working and everybody's miserable from morning to night.
Right. I think most people have embraced the change because of that, right? People want to spend their time and their effort helping people, having people be happy with the service they provide, and doing things that make a difference in the world. And so, if you take a very basic manual transaction and get it off their desk, get it up in the cloud, then and they can focus on really helping people and delighting people. Then yeah.
Did you renew your license in the last few years?
Online, yeah. Absolutely.
When was that?
A year ago, probably.
Went well?
Yeah, it's no problem.
And do you have kids, driving age?
Yeah.
How old?
I have a 17-year-old who got his driver's license a year ago, and it was a piece of cake.
Was it really a piece of cake?
It was, yeah. I mean, fortunately, he's a good driver. It might not have gone so well if he wasn't a good driver.
Josh Geballe. So tell me how your experience, both in the private sector and in government, is informing how you're approaching your new job as the head of Yale Ventures.
Gosh, a lot to that one, too. I mean, I think a couple things. One, it was pretty funny, actually. When I was interviewing for this job at Yale, a lot of people would warn me, Yale's a big place. It's a little bureaucratic, a little slow moving.
It is really bureaucratic. I've spent a little time working there. That is a momish bureaucracy.
I'd say, well, listen, I just got done working for 3 years for the state government.
Good point.
Everything's
Good
relative.
point.
And in fact, I may still be a little in the honeymoon period here, but I've actually found it to be a place where you can move things through pretty quickly. I mean, this reorganization around Yale Ventures got that done in 2 months. Big new budget changes. So things can move fast when the university puts its mind to it, and this is an area of tremendous focus right now. So, that's one. Learning how to get things done in large, complex organizations, how to build consensus, how to bring people along. I think that's important. And then the experience that we described in terms of working on a startup, right? I mean, I think this is an area where do
you feel like you're working at a startup in a big bureaucracy?
Yeah, absolutely. We're moving fast. We're not getting everything perfect. You're
going to break things and disrupt.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll experiment. I mean, when they say break stuff, what they're really talking about is experiment. Try new things. Not everything is going to work. Recognize quickly when it doesn't work and change direction. And that's what innovation's about.
And it's a good thing to be doing. So tell me how long you hope to be doing this.
Rest of my life. I mean, seriously, like when you've got a university like Yale that's spending $1 billion a year on R&D, there's never going to be an end to the new innovations coming out. And if you ever get bored of doing this work, you're doing it wrong.
Wow. That's a big commitment. How old are you?
47.
All right. So you could see doing this for 20 years.
100%.
Wow. Well, in that case, Josh Geballe, I wish you great luck of 20 years of success after success, because if you succeed, it's going to be our success in New Haven.
That's exactly right.
And it's kind of fun to see how cycles work. That what we're talking about, dreaming about, all the roadblocks we had in the 80s and early 90s in New Haven to try to make this happen, it's kind of taken shape and now going to the next level of Yale working with New Haven to build an entrepreneurial and tech economy and biotech economy. And it is happening. And the other thing I wish for you is that you find really good ways to include all of us in New Haven, because that's not easy.
Has to be done to work right. Absolutely,
right.
Paul. Thank you.
Well, Josh Geballe, thanks so much for joining us on Dateline New Haven. Thanks, Harry Drost and Nora Grace Flood, for working the controls. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.